Welcome to Veterans News and Special Reports, broadcasting podcast on YouTube.com. Don't forget to press like or dislike in the box. And if you want to leave a comment, please leave one and let us know what you think of this broadcast. Here we give a no-holds-barred reports at Veterans News and Special Reports podcast. Coming from beautiful downtown Spring Hill, Florida, we're on the air with Professor Rick Ballou, PhD, of Surviving the VA. This podcast series is episode 5A. Everything you hear on this podcast, we have documentation in PDF files to back it up. This special reports the corrupted Veterans Administration system. Veterans have no rights. Corrupted Veterans Board of Appeals, podcast episode 5A. In this episode, Rick is working on his next VBA hearing. He took a CMP exam and already has a copy. Now the rebuttal writing and with the exhibits begin. May the VA lines begin.
New questions about the VA and a claims crisis after audio recordings that reveal employees from the Department of Veterans Affairs discussing a backlog of medical requests from vets surfaces, and the tapes suggest that those employees decided the best way to deal with the crisis was to just destroy the files. That eliminates the requests. Trace Gallagher live in Los Angeles with more. Trace?
And it's no surprise the VA hospitals are backlogged, Megan, but now this evidence showing that thousands of veterans, many of them severely wounded, went years without getting their checkups, and some did not get them at all, mostly because the hospitals are understaffed, but also because veterans' medical files were destroyed to eliminate the backlog. Now, a former Marine and VA employee who blew the whistle says the VA hospital here in Los Angeles would get 3,000 requests a month for medical exams, but they could only have the resources to process about 800. So every 6 months, they'd have about 13,000 backlogged exam requests. Turns out that wait list accounted against their efficiency levels. So he alleges the hospital would cancel older requests, destroy the files, and now the Daily Caller has obtained audio to back up that claim. Listen.
Why are we scheduling orders 5 years back? I'm still canceling orders from 2001.
Anything over a year old should be canceled.
Should be canceled or scheduled?
Canceled, because they wouldn't let us do a mass purge. So it's just a matter of getting in there and canceling them ourselves.
The female voice goes on to say that a lot of those patients might have gotten treatment elsewhere or died or moved to another state. So the whistleblower complained to the Inspector General, but says the IG just sent the complaint back to the VA hospital. So he sent a letter to Congress, and a few months later he was fired. He's now fighting that termination. Years later, the IG finally acknowledged that hospitals across the country did purge some of those requests, but still were treating those who needed it. And the whistleblower's contention is you cannot treat those who need it or know who needs it because their files have been destroyed. We tried to contact the VA several times today, Megan. They did not call us back.
Wow. All right, Trace, thank you. Joining me now with reaction, Pete Hegseth, a Fox News contributor and the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. Pete, I don't understand whether they just got rid of some old x-rays that they decided weren't necessary, because the Office of Special Counsel seemed to say, look, we don't need to look into this any further, because basically what happened was every VA was told that they could do a mass purge of all outstanding imaging orders, like radiation orders. And that's basically what happened out in Los Angeles. Is that all this is?
Oh, and that's why they wouldn't comment on it, of course. Of course, that there's some of that, right? They were so far backlogged. There were some cases that have been resolved. Okay, we're going to deal with that. But you know what? This isn't new news. I mean, we've known they've been fudging numbers. They've been fudging appointment dates for a long time. What this is should be alarming, whatever adjective you want to pick, damning new evidence that they're deleting. They are, and the Marine that stepped up and said, I will not be a part of this. I will call my IG office and call out this department, said, because I will not throw under other vets under the bus to try to make my performance metrics look better. And he believes in the interviews, he knows that there were legitimate appointments with veterans still waiting who were canceled to make performance metrics look better. It's all about bureaucratic CYA, and that's what you see in this particular
In the law,
instance.
you look for corroborating evidence. So, this is on paper, so they say they did this to cover up the fact that there is a backlog. Well, what's the corroborating evidence? Do we have veterans who are out there complaining that they've had appointments and they can't get in to have those appointments, and there's a backlog and nobody ever calls them back? Do we have that? I think we do.
I think we do. Got an email this morning from a friend of mine whose buddy who he served with at that very Los Angeles facility had sent in a request, waited months, then years, never heard back at all, almost died because he didn't get the didn't get the examination needed to identify what he was suffering from. And later on in that audio, they talk about dismissively just saying, well, some of them have died and some of them have had other appointments, so let's just delete them. They're not thinking of veterans as customers. They're thinking of them as numbers through a process rather than customers who need to be served one by one, because each one of these has a story. They've served on the battlefield of this country and deserve to be taken care of. And bureaucrats instead are covering their butts.
Let me play devil's advocate. What's the big deal? So you go to another hospital. The VA doesn't call you back. Go to another hospital.
You can't. You cannot go to another hospital. You don't have a choice, and that's something I think Washington should address. I think this facility would, if it had a competitor, a way that vets could go somewhere else to get this care, it might be accountable to provide better service. Also, those in charge of this hospital can't get fired because it's impossible to fire a senior executive service member, something we're also trying to address on the Hill. So there's no accountability, and there's no portability, and there's also no transparency. You ask for comment, they don't give it because they don't have to, and they hide behind their paperwork and their titles, and no one holds them accountable. So if a veteran could choose, that'd be a great option. Unfortunately, they cannot. If you're stuck, you're stuck.
I've said it many times. My mom devoted most of her career to helping vets at the Albany, New York Veterans Hospital. There are so many wonderful employees who just want to help the veterans.
Absolutely.
And yet there are others who want to cover up malfeasance or negligence, sadly. Pete, great to see you.
Thanks, Megan.
Exhibit: Veterans have no rights. 1. VA hospital delays are killing American veterans. A CNN investigation, AC 360 degrees, dated November 20, 2013. The sources: VA dying waiting for health care. Flash: Columbia, South Carolina, CNN. Military veterans are dying needlessly because of long waiting and delays care by United States Veterans Hospital. What's worse, the United States Department of Veterans Affairs is aware of this problems and has done almost nothing to prevent veterans dying from delays in health care, according to documents obtained by CNN and interviews of numerous experts. As you see here, the problem is especially dire at the Williams James Veterans Hospital in Columbia, South Carolina. The Veterans Administration has confirmed 6 deaths at this hospital tied to delays, but sources close to the investigation says the number of veterans dead or dying from cancer because they had a long wait time to diagnose or treat at this facility. They are more than 20 months. As you have seen in the last video from Fox News, VA staff are telling office staff workers to shred documents in 2013. This exhibit continues. Congress added $1 million to fix the problem at that South Carolina hospital. The documents obtained by CNN's show that only 1/3 of the $1 million from Congress was used to intended purposes at this hospital. the $1 million payment for care for veterans on the waiting list. This documentation from CNN stated that 2/3 of the dollars sent would go somewhere else. It was needed. Where would it be more needed than to prevent the deaths of veterans? Would it have been used for bonus checks for the people working in the office that shredded the documents? I tell you, this reporter would like to know where that money went. At the same time, the document shows the waiting list at that hospital kept growing to 3,800 patients by 2011. More proof of corruption at this VA hospital. VA regional office and VBA courts across America in every hospital, whereas the veterans has no rights. Or is this system at the VA modeled after the communist doctrine or a socialist doctrine by the English government? Or is this just plain corruption, not to pay veterans their benefits they're entitled to? As Pete Hegseth said to Fox News, the Veterans Administration is the only socialized medicine in America. Now, what does that mean? That means you can't go nowhere to get any help after the VA denies help. We're going to now talk about the proof of the corruptions of the VA hospital regional office. And one day, the VBA courts will come across America. Even the hospitals are corrupt. And the veterans have no rights. Next, you'll hear the Veterans Administration invented the regional office in America to stop WW2 veterans' backlogs in 1945. Has it worked? No. PDF file exhibit history of the VA regional office across America 1. As veterans battle for benefits, it can take years. 1946 to 2006 is a prime example. Again, looking at CNN reports of what the VA really does. The investigation found out that if a veteran is receiving too many backlogs and complaints to the VA patient advocate office or the veteran's congressman, this veteran is put on a blacklist. When the veteran is put on a blacklist, the levels of the blacklist makes you, as a veteran, wait longer to get appointments for weeks, months, and even years on the VA's backlog list. What other punishments can be done by your doctor, your social worker, spinal cord doctor, is discrimination by the VA. It also, we've talked about the American Civil Rights Act, where a government agency can lose their benefits and funding for discrimination against veterans. What is a World War II veteran? It's my dad, your granddad, or your great-granddad fought in a war from 1941 to 1945. It was a world war. Everybody was in different parts of the world fighting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 5 years, and sometimes more. WW2 veterans battle for years for VA benefits. Could take from 1946 to 2006 if they live so long. Severe backlog, raising the number of claims, swamped the VA system. As I've been talking about, the VA's tactic to deny benefits to WW2 veterans and leave for more appeals, adding to more severe backlogs. Now you're going to hear the proof. There was no way for a WW2 veteran to override this decision of the VA regional offices, DRO, across America. Why? Who would come to the help of WW2 veterans to get benefits? No one. There will be no DRO counter reactions like the VBA courts until 1989. This will give more blood on the hands of the Veterans Administration. Photo on the right. Typical damage of a WW2 bomber coming back from a mission. Large holes from flak fired from cannons, small holes from enemy aircraft machine gun bullets. As you notice, the whole bottom of the plane is blown out with all the walls and ceiling and roof were totally riddled with bullet holes. If they were in the rain, it would run right through it. As a veteran looking at this photograph, you have to ask yourself, why didn't they give benefits to a disabled veteran that crashed in an airplane after this, or was wounded in action? The answer is simple. The bean counters in Washington, D.C., Congress, and the Senate know it's going to cost too much to supply benefits to injured and PTSD claims for these type of actions and bullet holes in their aircraft. This is unacceptable. That's right, fellow veterans. We're back on the air, and I want to explain to you what goes on at the VA. The year is 2019. As you remember, the VBA judge ruled in my case to reopen the 2006 case. I want you to meet the VA regional office team somewhere in America. The VBA judge requested in my case that a CMP exam with a neurologist or a neurosurgeon to give me that CMP exam. Did I get it? Step 1, how to prepare for a CMP exam for service-connected disability. Whereas you will have 1 to 2 months to prepare for this meeting. Collect as much of your service records as possible. Also, VA hospital information, VA hospital records, and your VA hospital doctor's reports is a must. The time you take is up to you as a veteran to schedule your workload and reading your files. Surprisingly enough, with the internet, you can look up MRIs and see good disc or bad disc. It's easy to bring up your speed and knowing whether you have a bad disc or where. Do not leave any of your records at that CMP exam office. This will filter back to the regional office and they will take whatever action in your future cases. Remember, nothing can prepare you for this corrupt CMP exam you're about to take. Most likely the examiner already has met with the regional office team face-to-face over the computer. Receiving files, they want him or her to write up in his report. Most of the time, the reports are pre-written before you, as a veteran. As in the last episode, my first CMP exam, I was told this man sitting in front of me was a doctor. To find out months later, there was a doctor assistant. The whole exam was rigged. This doctor's assistant was lying through his teeth, but the VBA judge did nothing about this after my rebuttal. Every time you go for a CMP exam, the main thing you must learn, the day of the exam, already have in your mailbox a request for the copy of this exam, written to your local VA regional office. You're about to take it a 6-week waiting period with these people. You know the doctor's name, date, and address to fill out your forms. Step 2, how to prepare for a CMP exam number 2 we've been talking about for my back injury. Go to the CMP exam about 45 minutes early. Look around the office for his or her doctor's business card. You know his name, so get the card as soon as possible. See what type of doctor this person is you're about to see. As you can see, this doctor's business card did not go to the regulation that was asked for a neurosurgeon or a neurologist. He was an allergy specialist doing for adults and pediatrics, so he's not going to be able to handle what you're about to get. As I went into the exam, I had my laptop with photographs of my discs and a complete spine. As you can see, the different layers in this documentation, I won't go through it. He was specializing in allergies, but he was already predestined and told what to look for and what not to talk about. As you remember, the VBA judge ordered this exam to be proper doctored, or ordered a neurologist or a neurosurgeon to do the CMP exam. This was rigged in the first place by Mr. Sindler at the DRO at the VA regional office. Now, if you go to an ER with a broken back in any American hospital and an allergy specialist starts operating on you and you're paralyzed, you could sue the hospital for millions of dollars for their stupidity, but you can't sue the VA hospitals for lying to you or the CMP exams. They are beyond reproach, even to by God. Step 3. The CMP examiner lied big time. He didn't know what I know. Receiving my copy of the CMP exam by Dr. Kim was very interesting at best. It was laughable at the lies the DRO, Mr. Singler, has to say he's not a doctor, though he could get away with it. But boy, oh boy, the VA didn't know who they're messing with. The next VBA court case was a doozy. My rebuttal was epic. I won the court case number 2, but still was denied because of Mr. Sindler. Looking at Dr. Kim's report, page 6, section 2, medical history. 2A, describe the history including onset, of course, of the veteran's thoracic spine back condition. Briefly explain. Or jokingly saying a lie. Dr. Kim's statement to a federal judge was as follows. Onset date 1969. Details of onset. The sustained injury of the left upper back after conveyor belt broke and whipped against his left scapular area. Admitted to the hospital for 3 weeks. Worsening back condition with disc rupture. 1970s. Underwent discectomy. In 1978, surgeon repaired bone fragment during a spinal canal. What kind of doctor misspells discectomy. The law states you cannot lie to a judge when he said in 1986 had a compression fracture of the lumbar spine is the reason I was in the hospital in 1986. Step 4. Falsifying records, getting others to falsify records, to deny benefits, using these records at a federal VA court of law to meet the DRO's Mr. Sindler's game plan to deny benefits to this veteran. February 10th, 2020, an email from my lawyer that's supposed to be working on my case. He states, I peaked at the VA contract exam dated September 13, 2009 that requested with an opinion from the examiner on your back condition. If you remember, this doctor was an allergy specialist. Wow, back condition, allergy specialist. During service connection was acute only. There is no evidence of damage sustained to the spine after injury from a broken conveyor belt strap. No other evidence of back injury sustained during service. No evidence of chronic care. Remainder of the active duty service dates despite other treatments of chronic June 19th and July 1969. The veteran's current back condition is due to a compression fracture in 1968, which is separate and unrelated to the veteran's time of service. My lawyer also writes, the nexus has not been established, so his back condition will eventually be denied on remain. My question is, how did my lawyer peak at my contract exam dating September 13, 2009 when I could not find it at first, then found it in my military records file room in St. Louis, Missouri? This lawyer is not allowed to go to St. Louis, Missouri to peek at my records after they received it. This is evidence one that my lawyer was working with the regional office in St. Petersburg, Florida, and Mr. Sindler. Step 5. The exam reports equals the veteran's current back condition is due to a compression fracture in 1986, which is separate and unrelated to the veteran's service. As Gomer Pyle would have said, golly, lie, 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 lie. The DRO worker, Mr. Sindler, and my lawyer, Mr. Corey, did not know I had records on disk of my 1986 hospital stay. The VA's exam was talking about a compression fracture that occurred in the year of our Lord 1986 in McGuire's Veterans Hospital, Richmond, Virginia. That hospital stay was documented by the director of the psychology ward for my 3-week stay on her ward. You have to ask yourself, why was I on a psychology ward for compression fracture in 1986 instead of spinal cord or neurology? On purpose, I did not show any of my documentation of this stay to this lawyer, Mr. Corey, because I believe he was working for the Veterans Administration in the first place. The question is, what is a VBA court of law? After this veteran has shown the patterns of the Veterans Administration hospitals, the administration at the regional office, St. Petersburg, Florida, and to the Veterans Board of Appeals federal judge wherever in America, that the Veterans Administration has lied to a federal judge. Will the VBA judge hold the Veterans Administration up to standards of American law? The answer is no. Veterans News Flash, see the rebuttal. Don't miss the next thrilling pack, episode 6. The Professor Rick Ballou still won his VBA case number 2, but was it turned over to the DRO, Mr. Sendler, to try again to screw this veteran? Yes. You will see what the outcome of this one, as you will see a detailed proof of I was right and they lied.